welcome to the Fandom Show, the podcast where we learn about fantastic fandoms by talking to our favorites about their favorites. I'm Kaya Green.
And I'm Kaya Green.
And today we are talking about, and I'm saying this in italics,
I didn't even notice.
Fonts.
I love that you didn't notice that I just said I'm Kaya Green.
I was just focused on what was happening.
You were so ready for your intro in italics. Fonts.
I mean, every time I read this, because our names are reversed, I say the wrong thing.
Oh.
Or almost say the wrong thing.
I didn't actually notice they were reversed until now.
Every time my brain has to switch them. So.
Well, one of us should have fixed that.
Anyway, today we're talking about, and I'm saying this in italics and bold, fonts.
I'm underlining it.
Nice. Very good. I'm very excited for this episode today. I'm going to be real with you. I'm stoked.
I am also like, I don't know why I'm so excited. Well, I do know why, because I don't know anything about this, but it's everywhere. It's something that if you don't think about it, it's easy to not think about. But if you look around you right now as you're listening to this, I bet you anything, you're going to find so many different fonts being used on books, on posters, on shirts.
On your computer, on different websites.
On your mug.
That's right. If you stand up, we were talking about this at one point where we were standing on the street as we were discussing this upcoming episode. We were just out doing chores and looking down the street, you could see at least 25 different fonts on just storefronts. And it was like, this is, once you start thinking about it, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
And I, as a rule, just love learning about design because I find it so fascinating that the things that we take for granted in the background of our lives are somebody made an intentional decision about that.
Absolutely.
I find that so incredibly fascinating. And this is one of those things that really, really blends in until it doesn't.
Oh, I'm stoked. Kai, do you know anything about fonts?
Oh, very little. I know that some have serifs and some do not.
Do you know what those things mean?
I know that serifs are the little flaggy bits on the end.
Oh, so like an A that has a little bloop.
Yeah.
Or like the little this is going great.
You're just gesturing
with my hand silently to myself. Cool.
No, you said bloop.
Way to go, podcast host. Episode 82. You're killing it. Jesus.
This is why we won an award recently. Yes. So serifs, I think I'm not going to be the right person to explain this, are the little lines that Times New Roman has that Arial doesn't, I think. So I know that. I know that line weight makes a big difference because I use it in video editing and stuff at my job. And I know I have watched documentaries about fonts and have zero facts to bring to the table from those, besides that I enjoyed them and found them very interesting.
I love it.
Steph, what about you? What do you know about fonts?
They're on computers.
Nice.
And then they go into the world. They have names. Some of the names don't match the thing I'm looking at when I see the name.
Yes, that's fair. Have you ever downloaded a font?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
How are you supposed to make Lord of the Rings media for yourself if you don't have the font to support that?
It's very funny because the first one I ever had to download was the Buffy font, which is called Buffied.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the first one, but yeah, anytime I had to do something fandom related, I was like,
yeah,
I know I can download a thing that makes it look like this.
Yeah.
So that's about the extent of it.
Perfect.
Which is great. It's a great entry point. Some of my favorite episodes are ones where I don't know shit about this.
I don't know nothing.
You know who does know about fonts?
I'm going to guess that it is the person that is guesting.
And sitting beside us
right
now. So Carl Shura is a graphic designer who's focused on identity and brand management, wayfinding in exhibits, and type design. He's faculty of the School of Design at George Brown College in Toronto, where he lectures on design, typography, communications, and print production. And he also runs a newly launched digital font foundry at depthofletters.ca. I will link it in the show description, where you'll find his latest available fonts, including Circulation Serif and Mullion, both winners of a CA Award of Excellence for Type Design in recent years, 2022 and 2025, which is right now. Carl, that's so cool.
You've
made fonts.
You've made award-winning fonts. Hi.
Welcome. Are we too hype right now?
Hello.
You're like, this is about fonts, and these two are screaming at me.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know we normally don't start conversations by yelling your accolades at you. How you doing today?
I'm all right. I actually just came straight from the college.
Ooh.
So in a whirlwind day of excitement.
Were you lecturing about fonts today by any chance?
A little bit. It's the first day of the semester, but In my intro, I talk a lot about typography because how can you not, honestly? These are first-year students, and so they are excited about typography, and they're excited about everything because they know nothing.
What a beautiful place to start from, though.
It's
Honestly.
true. Tabula rasa, you know? Okay, so here's a question for you. How did you get into fonts? Like, when were you that person who didn't know anything?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. Yeah. So, okay. So I can take this in so many, let's take the real, like the adult situation approach, and then we'll see. So, I never knew that I would be a designer in the first place. So graphic design was not a thing that I was aware of, except that I was constantly doing it.
Okay.
Like
interesting.
all through school, my notes were just illustrations and like advertisements for things related to the topic, right? So like if in biology class we were learning about like what a glucose molecule does as it passes through the body, I'd make a little like kind of infographic about that, and I'd have some kind of weird stupid advertisement related to it, like, oh, look at the Krebs cycle, get it today. So
You must have had the best notes.
they were pretty great, yeah. But so I always was like doing that already, but it never really clicked for some reason that could be a job.
Yeah.
Like I didn't understand that people made the stuff that was out there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's possible, but so I worked for so long at Starbucks, and it was one day looking at the coffee bags, which are beautiful, in their own way, in their special way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, somebody makes these, and that's probably a better job than selling them.
That is correct. Yeah.
That's so funny.
So like I realized that I could go study that and maybe get a job. And so I did that. And as I was studying, like, because you know nothing, you start learning all these crazy things that you hadn't ever thought about. And one of them was typography. And like every designer is kind of like a crazed lunatic about typography to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Like, it is such an easy thing to just latch onto and be excited about because it is one of those kind of esoteric things that just exists out in the ether. And when you realize that somebody is making it or that somebody has particular skills about how to make it work really well, like that feels like real magic. Like I'm doing alchemy now kind of thing. So there were just a series of events that started during school, getting to see like speakers and workshops about typography and type design. And I realized that that was a thing that really appealed to me, this kind of like very technical aspect, which like it's a very long process and very meticulous.
Yeah.
And that does not appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that appeals to me a lot. Like, take it slow. We're going to spend 18 months on this, and then maybe we'll move on. Kind of. So, like...
that's a superpower.
Yeah.
As someone who has no attention span, that's a superpower.
Yeah. I found that incredible.
Yeah.
Well, so that's how it kind of started. And so it's just, I always tell students this too, like there's always stuff happening on campus or around town. Like there's always going to be these free lectures or talks or little workshops happening. And like, I know they're all like, I've got 19 projects due like this week and next week, but it's so worth it to take an hour or two and go take advantage of those things. Because like you may find something that you will do for the rest of your life. So I'm glad that I took those opportunities. And so I've just been kind of looking for these things since then. And one of the things about it was realizing how, like, it's kind of a niche. It's a very niche, like not every school is teaching type design.
Yeah.
There are basically a handful. Like there are 6 places in the world that are teaching like postgraduate or master's degree level type design. So there's very few people out there who like actually do it professionally.
Whoa.
And there's very few places to go and get that knowledge. So I was looking for where those things were happening. The first place that I took a real like kind of like workshop was here in Toronto, right after we moved here from Winnipeg. And that was in 2015, summer. And it was at Coach House Books.
Oh, yep.
So Coach House Books is this in an alley in an old coach house. And it was the summer, and it was like 1,000 degrees in there.
Oh my God.
But it was such a cool place to have this weird esoteric like workshop. Was up in the like attic of this 200-year-old coach house. And Kevin King was the guy teaching it. And he had worked at Canada Type for many years. He was a very skilled calligrapher. And so he was leading this month-long workshop about the kind of basics of creating a digital font. So I had already had a little bit of experience like with the letter forms and how things work, but he was putting it all together for us. And we got started on one of the pieces of type design software called Glyphs. So out of that, I had created a kind of revival typeface based on Pacioli's De Divina. He writes some like Roman capitals in there.
Okay.
And he's trying, so there's this whole kind of exercise through the Renaissance and Baroque period where artists are trying to like codify and mathematically explain everything, including like writing.
Oh, interesting.
And the forms that our letters took. And so they were kind of like working backwards, like retconning the like Roman capital letters and being like, actually, it's these proportions because it's like the 10 humors and like there's 11 gods and the whatever, like insane like stuff around it, but all very mathematical and geometric and
It'd be like where the line is in the middle of an F type of thing, like talking
exactly.
about why it's where it is.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So like just taking the forms, which like work really well, and then deciding that it's for this reason.
Were any of those based in like looking at those now? Do any of those make sense? Those reasons?
Well,
because I know like the humors are not a thing now. Everybody's like, well, that was nonsense.
The only thing I think that would continue to hold water is the idea of like the overall proportion. So like the height from base to cap of like a capital letter I, for instance. Mm-hmm. So that being a kind of measuring point, that does correspond to other things. So like the thickness of that stem, like that thickness of that stem should be 1/8 or 1/10 of that height. And so that's pretty standard even today. So that's kind of a good starting point. They got some proportional like ideas, which were just very obvious from analyzing them, but they constantly were adding in this other stuff like, it's because there's 17 angels in the firmament of the blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
right?
of course. So, we all know this.
Obviously.
But so that was my first typeface, was this kind of weird Renaissance revival of Roman capital letter forms, which I then revived in a digital form.
That rules.
That's sick. I have so many. My brain. Okay. Where to start?
Breathe through it, Steph. You got this.
What was the first font you ever saw and you were like, I love the way this looks, and it just like made you interested in fonts and typography? Like, was there one that captured you?
Like, did you have a first love of fonts?
Like, was it Garamond? It has those little serifs.
Oh my goodness. I don't want to make the rest of them jealous.
First, not only love.
Yeah.
First.
It's kind of okay, so I'm going to say Optima.
Okay.
Optima, okay.
And that feels like a weird choice, but I think it's really true. Because it's not a like blow you out of the water typeface. It's quite restrained. But there's something about it. It's kind of in between. It straddles the line of serif and sans serif.
Ooh, interesting.
And it takes its proportions from these classical Roman proportions, but is also like very modern in a way. And it captures a calligrapher's hand in a way that's not like a weird, stupid, well, I don't want to be rude.
It's your podcast.
I say go for it.
Like a weird, stupid Edwardian script.
Oh, like with all the swirly whirlies all over the place.
I don't have time for that.
They feel a little gimmicky.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
It's a bit flashy. Calm down.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, Optima has this really subtle flair on all of the vertical strokes. So it's not just straight as like a rectangle kind of thing. Like that's not the stroke. It has this subtle like change in pressure to it that gives it this life, and it looks gorgeous. And anytime I see it anywhere, I'm like, kudos to that designer. They are correct.
That's awesome.
Oh, I love that.
That little stuff that your brain registers that like you don't, even if you don't know to look for it, you see it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like it gives a vibe, regardless of what you don't or do know about it. Like you're gonna get that vibe for sure.
Yeah, I like in
Very
my
classy looking.
spare time I'm trying to like learn to sketch and draw. I've been doing that for a long time. I'm not good, but I like it. And it is so fascinating how much like line weight and those little things can add action, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
That's
Yeah.
Always fascinates me. Do I
I'm
know
just
how to
showing
do
you
it?
Optima.
Oh, ooh, yeah, that's
like,
classy.
ooh.
Okay, you can't hear this on the podcast, so I'll try not to react too big. But okay, so that was like your first love. Now today, is there like a font that, besides of course yours, which are the best, that is your personal like gold standard?
Gold standard is a hard category.
It
here.
is.
Because
Yes.
there's place and time for all of them, I would imagine.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
There's
we come with the tough
We
questions.
can also come back around to this because we have lots of questions.
Yeah, I don't think I hold anything in quite the same esteem as Optima, but I always do say that my favorite font ever is Cooper Black.
Okay.
Oh.
I know that one.
I do stand by it. Yeah, it's a chunky guy.
Yeah.
And I love it.
It's got impact, that one.
Absolutely.
I think that's a different font.
Ooh.
Very good font joke. Very good font joke.
I looked at so many font names. Getting ready for this.
Fantastic.
Maybe that's a hack joke, and you're like, classic.
God,
Classic.
boring.
Heard that a million times. Okay, so here's a question. Because this is about the goods and the bads. What distinguishes, in any case, a quality font, a good font, from a bad font or a like ungainly one?
So this is another thing I tell students all the time, and it breaks their hearts the first time I tell it to them.
Oh, no.
Which is to not use fonts from dafont.com.
Whoa, what's Dafont? No.
It's like the free one, right? That you can download things from?
It's the free one with thousands and thousands of fonts on it. And I always backpedal that because there are some good fonts you can find in there. And there are some very like specific to like if you need a font that looks like scary branches put together, like you will be able to find that on Dafont. And that's maybe the only place to find it.
Right.
So, but the main problem of sites like Dafont are that they will have low quality fonts on them. And that's to be that's to be expected.
They're free. Yeah.
They're free, yeah. So people are churning these out just to throw them up and like maybe have their name known. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how exactly the business model of Dafont works, but the difference between like a font that is worth the like $65 or $200, whatever is being charged for a font, is it's the number of glyphs in that set. So whether it can actually function as a full font for a particular language or many languages. And the other part is whether they've given the time to all of the nuance for the various metrics. So vertical and horizontal metrics being like the spacing. So, and it goes more than that. It's each individual character as well. Once you are dealing with spacing, you're also dealing with the forms themselves. So there's a push and pull back and forth during that design process where, like, if I'm going to have this much space between the characters, then these characters need to be formed differently, slightly, just to redistribute the mass of the form and the, like, quote unquote, the negative mass of the space inside it and outside. So there's this, like, constant back and forth in the process, and that takes so much time.
I can only imagine.
Whereas if I just write out, like, everybody knows what the alphabet looks like, the Latin alphabet, right? So I can write A through Z capitals. I can write A through Z lowercase. I can write all my numbers. I can throw in some symbols even, right? Right? $, hashtag, @
The classics.
Yeah. So I can do that really quickly. And if I digitize that, it's fine, right? It'll look like a font. But it's garbage. So I think that's the big difference between kind of like a low quality font. That's how I would define a low quality font, is that there isn't that attention, which, you know, naturally will take tons and tons of time.
Right. So I think often when people think of a font getting bolder or the line weight increasing, they just think, oh, you make it thicker and it's the same, but it's absolutely not that, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Microsoft products did do that. And other software will also go that route because you can just tell the computer, okay, wherever that outside edge is, just make it bigger.
Just more.
Make it more. Make more.
Make
more.
Yeah. So,
×2.
Yeah. And sometimes that's fine. Oftentimes not. And yeah, ideally that is not what you want when you're designing fonts. So every weight of that font needs to be different. Even to the point of, like, some very well-made and expensive fonts, like something, for instance, from Heffler, Frere Jones, they would have made even optical sizes. So, which is something that is traditionally from type making.
Right.
Because we would be making these metal forms for every size. And naturally, like, you're making a different, if you're going to make something that's almost an inch high versus something that's like 2 millimeters high, those are two separate pieces of metal that you are carving and making. And so you're making decisions about the line weight on them. So, like, the regular weight in something that's really big is going to be it's going to be a little bit lighter in weight because you can't have that same amount of weight in the tiny one. Where together, though, on the printed page, they will look like they are the same weight, just a different size. So that's optical kind of scaling, that's optical adjustment. And so some of these high-end digital fonts are doing that now too, where if you choose, I'm going to choose 72 point now, it's actually slightly modified. It's not just that same one and big.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Holy shit.
Is this partially why this question make no sense? I can't wait to find out when it comes out of my mouth. How fonts are, like, don't just go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They, like, jump points, right? Don't they? They do. Like, 72 point is a thing. Is that partially because of that? The sizing of it? Or
Like,
is that
are you
just a
talking about,
weird
like,
thing?
in Word where it's just like,
Yeah.
it goes from like 20, 24, 36,
Precisely
42,
that. Yeah.
etc.
Or is that just
48?
a weird computer thing?
That's a great question, and also comes a little bit from, like, historic tradition. So I don't do optical sizes. I'm not at that stage in my career where I can, like, afford 1,000 hours of time to
That's reasonable.
That sounds luxurious.
I know.
You're like, this is my dream.
Are there jobs where someone can
Honestly.
spend that much time to do it? Like,
Seriously, yeah.
oh,
That's wild.
I don't know how to do it yet,
not yet.
but
Not
we'll
yet.
see.
One day.
Yeah. So so any font that I make is just going to be scaled up, just naturally. So I'm choosing a 72 point font a line weight that's kind of middle of the road for general type use, text face use. And if it's super tiny, it should still be legible. And that's part of the process too, is we're printing these things out constantly and looking at them at different sizes.
Neat.
And so, if it's illegible now at, 1 millimeter high, that might not be a problem for most people, but I think most of us who are obsessed with this, we would say, no, I'm going to adjust my entire set now. So, like, you're making these adjustments all the time. Hopefully you haven't finished the set at this point. But,
right.
So, and same with, like, when you make it super big. If it feels like a little gangly and wrong, I'm going to adjust that in that kind of moderate size at around 10 or 12 point, just to see. So, so that said, like, generally most fonts are going to just be scaling from a particular kind of line weight.
Yeah.
And that's fine, totally fine, because that's taken into account.
Yeah.
The reason we have this scale of numbers and not just able to drop down the menu, choose 1 through 100, right? Partly because that's too many numbers to drop down.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, that would be...
No one wants or needs that. Yeah. No.
It's like when you have to scroll to find your year of birth. It's like, I don't need to go back to 1900. That's not me.
Old every time.
Honestly. But the bigger reason is that again, back to metal type, you're not going to make every possible iteration of size.
Of course you're not.
So you're going to choose some. And the reason you're going to choose particular sizings is because it is a scale. So it's a harmonious scale. So these numbers should have a ratio correspondence to each other.
Whoa. That legitimately just blew my mind.
So one of the typical numbers that you start with is either going to be 4 or 8. So if we've got 4, right, we've got 4, we've got 8, we've got 12, we've got 16, we've got 20, 24, 20, right?
Yeah.
You can see the pattern.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's typically what is happening in software. Part of it is because we have used this so long, this idea of a scale, that it makes sense to just replicate that digitally.
Right.
Because this is what typographers are using to print. This is what we will use to print as well, right? Makes sense. And so the other part of it is that now that we are in an era, I mean, how long have computers been around? I keep talking about it like it's new. But
in the grand scheme of the world, it certainly is.
Compared to like using a printing press or having these like typographic things.
Forms.
Yep.
I think. Yeah, letter forms? Those little guys?
I don't know. But yeah, in relation to how long we've been doing printing presses, like it is a short time.
Yeah. So like, the 90s. Suddenly everybody had this ability in their home. And to leave someone who knows nothing about print to their own devices, like
most of us,
people at home would immediately feel discouraged, I think,
Yeah.
if you were just choosing random font sizes. Mm-hmm. So if you've got just this set scale, we've only got maybe 12 in the set to choose from, putting any collection of those together are going to feel right because they have this ratio correspondence to each other.
Damn.
So if I want a big headline, I'm going to choose whatever, like 60. And then I'm choosing something kind of smaller, 24. Looks terrific, amazing.
Yeah.
And then 12 point for my text, beautiful. I've got this like harmonious thing that like 100 years ago, a typographer would be choosing exactly the same sizes, right? So I think that's the reason we've got that in the dropdown.
That is fascinating. My life has changed.
What goes into designing a new font? Like, are some letters particularly obnoxious? And do you need, we were just talking about like redesigning it repeatedly for line weight. What's the worst letter?
Like, are Y's bad?
Is it an A?
No, A's are actually quite enjoyable. Like a lowercase double story A. It's
double story meaning it has like little chapeau on the top, like the little like curve at the top.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Good guess.
Yeah. No, that's a fairly like it's a fun one to do because there's a lot of potential in it. And that can, sometimes these weird letters are the ones that kind of define the look of the whole set.
Ooh.
So that's the fun of doing the weird ones, the ones that are hard. A is less hard, I'd say, than S. Even though it's got some similar moves to it. S is diabolical.
And you have an S in your last name, and I have it for my first. And I hate trying to figure out an S.
That makes sense. Like every time I draw like a, I don't know, happy birthday or something on a, I mean, there are no S's in happy birthday, but every time I'm trying to like write out a card or something, S's are always the hardest thing to get the same or like, yeah,
Or like
that
the
makes
proportions
a lot
of top to bottom. Like
Totally.
how big is that top section versus the bottom?
That
Damn
makes
you
sense
S's.
that they would be crazy.
Yeah, totally. X is also very tricky. W is maybe my most... I often leave W right to the end
Really?
because I don't know what to do with W.
Yeah, is it like, are you doing a pointy bottom? Are you doing a round bottom? Like, is your M a pointy top? Is it a round top? Like, and does your M and your W match?
Right.
Oh.
Right. No, yeah, often not.
Yeah.
Capital M is going to have almost straight vertical sides, those two strokes. And your W, you don't want that because that's going to look crazy.
Super weird.
I guess that would look weird.
Yeah.
I'm discovering things right at this moment.
We're learning a lot.
There could be very specific cases though where
Yeah.
you'd want that, and that would be very niche
Yeah.
to a letter set. But yeah,
More of a default kind of situation.
absolutely. We'll leave that for default.
One of our patrons wants to know, this is Tyler from Patreon, how far off does a new font need to be from an existing font redesign? Oh, sorry. How far off does a new font need to be from an existing font before it is no longer infringing? And how do you measure that?
Are you asking for legal reasons, Tyler?
Tyler, are you coming?
I just want to let's clarify that this is not legal advice.
Beautiful.
Not a lawyer.
So the thing is, there's a long tradition of revivals, and very rarely, I mean, in terms of actual copyright stuff, the copyright on a font is very specifically the font software.
Whoa.
So it is not the design per se. It can never be like the idea presented, right? And nobody owns the alphabet
Yep.
yet.
Well,
Give it time. Alphabet is a company, so.
Yeah. But so in that respect, the only way that it's truly illegal is if you take an existing piece of font software, like let's say we take Helvetica Bold, 12 point.
oh, okay.
Love it. A classic.
And if you just take that and copy those outlines and put those, put your extreme points exactly where they put their points, then you are stealing them.
Okay.
It is stolen. But if I just kind of mimic exactly Helvetica Bold in my own way, and it looks very much like it, maybe exactly like it,
Yeah.
my points are never going to be exactly at the same point.
Oh,
Probably. So I think it's not exactly an infringement.
You just call it Melvetica.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's the other thing is that names are copyrighted.
damn.
for
Oh,
sure.
interesting.
So you can't just call something Helvetica without any problem. And also, I think Monotype owns Helvetica now, and I would not want to meddle with Monotype.
Are they like a giant? Are they big font?
They are now, yeah. They absolutely are. And there's drama.
Oh, please expand.
Please tell
I
us
need
some
to
font
know.
drama, please.
So it's just that they are this massive machine. And they feel like they're doing, I'm sure they're great. A lot of great people work for Monotype, and rightly so, because if you're the biggest game in town and you're like one of the best type designers, like that makes sense. It's on the side of independent type foundries, though, that are like trying to get by and do their thing. And inevitably, if you get like substantially successful, Monotype wants to buy you. Which
classic.
It has become this kind of like small independent type foundries are kind of like, some of them are just waiting for Monotype to take them. And like that is sad in a way, but like also good for you. I mean, go
get
for
paid.
get your payday.
Yeah.
But it is making it into a monoculture. So like Monotype will control every good font. And I'm not sure that that's the best situation.
Yeah.
The other thing that is in the design world is also like Adobe. They're the other monster, huge corporation.
Yeah.
And they are kind of the monopoly on all the software.
Yep.
So there are these, for better or worse, things are kind of getting smaller in the world of design.
That makes sense. That seems to be true of a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's a familiar story for sure.
So there are like some default fonts that the average layman would have, like an Arial or a Times New Roman. How do they become defaults? Like, how do programs like Word choose their list of fonts?
Oh my word.
Like, do we know how Arial won that prize?
Like, I know this is, I think, Arial.
I did. As
was just
I was
the default.
Writing that question, think about that.
Yeah. Like,
Suddenly became
Carl
very
know
aware.
what font we've used? Will he judge us?
Well, in the case of Arial, that's an easier answer than like who does the choosing or what. Well, maybe I do have an answer. So I
got really excited.
somebody like Microsoft Corporation, right?
Yep.
And same with Apple. They started with system fonts and they designed them.
Okay.
So they had people designing them specifically. They knew that they wanted something that was like a Garamond. They want something kind of classic text face.
But something that was theirs specifically.
Something that was theirs. So like you get something like Georgia, for instance, in Apple, right? So talking about Arial, that was Microsoft's move. They were like, we need Helvetica.
No way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Arial is their answer to Helvetica, essentially. Yeah. And it is very distinct to avoid any potential problem with the owners of Helvetica. So that's why it's got some weird shapes to it, but also because I don't know. I think I like Arial.
It's a very digestible font. Like, it's very easy to read.
It's so
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Does it bother you when you see certain fonts being used? We're specifically talking about the SNL sketch on Papyrus. Did it bother you that a multi-million-dollar movie used Papyrus for their name?
Avatar specifically.
Avatar, we're looking at you. We see you.
I think it was the right choice. It's a fine choice. Like Papyrus comes from a specific context and it's got a certain vibe to it.
Yeah, it certainly does.
It certainly does. And whether we hate it or love it, it fits the creative brief.
Yeah.
And so I can't complain about that, really. And there's a lot of fonts like that I might never want to actually use in design, but I will have respect for because they are like well made for their purpose.
Right.
And so that's the thing about fonts is like we can get upset about
And people do.
And people definitely do.
people do. But in the end, like I think it is fulfilling a kind of duty. Like it's made for a specific reason.
Yeah.
And if it gets used for that specific reason, like it seems crazy to me to complain about that.
Yeah. If you're in a daycare and you see Comic Sans MS, that's the place for that font.
That is the one that gets complained about, I feel like, the most, right?
But is it complained about because it's used in the wrong context? And that's why people are like, I don't need an office memo in Comic Sans. It doesn't make it playful. It just makes you look immature.
Maybe.
Well, so I love Comic Sans. I think I've really come around.
I love this. Love for Comic Sans, finally.
There's two reasons for it. One is I appreciate the kind of wrongness. We assign that it is wrong to use this for something serious.
Yeah.
To me, that's amazing. Like the CERN scientists a few years ago, they announced the Higgs boson particle.
Yeah.
Like one of the most substantially important discoveries
like
in particle physics. Yeah.
Yep.
Like maybe the most important announcement in modern history. And they used Comic Sans
Oh my God.
to send that out.
I think I remember this happening. I think I remember people talking about this.
And it is a perfect choice in my estimation because they chose what they thought was going to be like holding this announcement in the best way. Like they were very excited and they were happy.
Yeah.
They wanted something digestible for the general public, and this is what they chose.
Yeah.
So I have no qualms. I think it's perfect. It's terrific. The other part of Comic Sans is that we have since discovered that because it's got some like weird shapes, it's not exactly mirrored. Like a lowercase b and a d are not the same shapes, just rotated.
Oh, interesting.
And because of that, people with dyslexia find it a lot easier to read.
Wow.
So there are a lot of use cases where like kind of legibility and readability are better served because we're using something that is a little bit off and a little bit quirky. And so that's another point for Comic Sans.
Oh, fascinating.
I love that.
That is so cool. Okay, so it's unfairly maligned is what we're saying here.
Well, I think it almost became, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like a bit that everyone does.
Yeah.
Like Comic Sans, the worst, right? Same with Papyrus. Like, oh, that's the worst font. It's like, no, not necessarily. Like I used to, especially like early internet days, it was my go-to font of choice. And people were like, Steph, you're not a child. And I was like, but it's cute and I like it. That's fascinating.
You're correct.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm justified. Take that, Sailor Moon chat room.
Okay, on this note, I feel like we have to talk about the notion of wingdings because I feel like wingdings I have only recently realized are not nonsense. They actually have like a purpose to them. Because I feel like when I was growing up, I was like, this is a garbage font for garbage people. No one would ever use this.
Yeah, Wingdings is fascinating because I would use it and just be like, what's this button in Wingdings?
Another thing that I feel like is very maligned, but there's a purpose for it, right?
You tell me.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Okay. So from what I understand about it, the Wingdings is a series of symbols that was based on, what were they called? Cut this part out. Dingbats, that's it. Which were symbols created in the printing back when they were creating metal printing forms that would like decorate. So they'd be like leaves or like things that could fill in the page because there was just no software to do that. You had to have a like type form to do it. So basically, Wingdings is like the Windows version of those, of like things you can use to decorate your document that will then like expand and fit the rest of the typeface.
Oh.
Yeah, it's true. And so it acts as those ornament pieces in a piece of design, especially for early desktop publishing. Like if I'm going to do a card for grandma, it's great to have like a kind of a filigree picture frame around the edges.
Before
and I can do that.
Had the ability to just put that in.
I don't have graphics for that.
Yeah.
So they were 100% just using that kind of old way of in a printer's kind of wheelhouse, right? The other part of it, though, is that there are symbols in there that are called by the operating system. So for various other software. So like a smiley face, right?
Yeah.
The smiley face is going to be called when, like now, I can't stop Outlook from doing it. But if I put a colon and a closed parentheses,
it forces it into
throws that, right?
It does.
And
but then some programs don't do it, and it pisses me off that once in a while someone's like, no, it's not a smiley face. I was like, Fuck you. Why you? Why betray me like this?
And for the longest time, every email I got from HR, like for 6 years in a row, it just said J at the bottom. And I was like, this is from Karen, isn't it? What is this J? And I asked, and because I have an Apple, she's sending from a PC, she's sending a smiley face to me.
Whoa.
But the keyboard track is a capital J when it comes up my end. So
Fascinating.
hilarity ensues.
Exactly. A French farce.
Wingding, strike again.
So yeah, it was like early emojis in a way.
Yeah, in a way, but like also in kind of very structural ways. So like different lines or different lines of line weights as well. Like, right, that would be a piece of software could be calling whatever, because, I don't think I have time to get into everything, but like, I can't even remember the name of the thing. Oh my God.
That's okay. If you remember it later, we can always put it in our Nerds Letter.
Totally.
Okay. Okay, we'll come back to it.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so you already mentioned monotype, but who are some of the big names in typography? Like, who are some of the superstars of font making?
Like, who are the celebrities? Who made Garmin?
Who's the bad boy? And what font did he make?
Okay, so we've definitely got some superstars today. James Edmondson at Oh No Type Company. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves his fonts. And they're getting a lot of love internationally. A lot of brands use his stuff. Many of his fonts are now in the Adobe library, so anybody with Adobe products can use it. And he makes just really fun, cool stuff. Klim Type Foundry in New Zealand as well. They make incredible, very meticulous, like this is a guy who sits for thousands of hours laboring over a typeface and then releases it and blows everyone's mind because it's so like the typefaces that we are used to, but so different.
Wow.
Like somehow he does this kind of alchemy again, like, right? He somehow gets the essence of the thing and makes something entirely new. So I'm fascinated by Chris Sowersby. That's at Klim Type. In Canada, Rod McDonald, he's been around for a long time. And so he's seen the cold metal type era into the photo type era, into digital. And he's done a lot of very cool work. I think we still have Matthew Carter as well. He was one of the huge guys who made tons of fonts for Microsoft. You've definitely used a Matthew Carter font. Who else?
Is there anyone making anything that everyone's like, you've gone too far?
You broke all the rules.
You're a bad boy of typography. I don't know why I'm obsessed with the bad boy.
You really want to know who the bad boy
is.
is.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Maybe I've got the bad. Well,
is it Carl Shura?
It's absolutely not.
I am the good boy of typography.
I am the best boy of typography.
Yeah. I mean, James Edmondson, again, Oh No Type, they were getting into some kind of wild territory for a little while. So he and Grilly Type. So Grilly Type has been quite popular for a number of years. And they've made some kind of, they've also kind of latched onto this sans serif kind of neutral, Helvetica-esque kind of vibe, but also made that into an insane kind of extrapolation. So like thin areas and sharp areas that are too sharp and too thin, right? So I think, yeah, Grilly has some interesting fonts. Oh No Type, they've got some interesting stuff. I think ABC Dynamo as well. They're doing some wild things. Yeah, there's a lot of people, especially right now. Like, I mean, in the digital era, there is so much opportunity to do something really weird with your fonts because you don't have to dedicate like a day's work to carving into a piece of metal.
Yeah.
Like in 10 minutes, I can make a lowercase a and decide whether it's terrible or great.
Right.
And then I can work on it a little bit, right? In that 10 minutes, I can make like a lowercase I and a lowercase n. I can make those into a U and an H. I can cut off part of that N and make an R. Like I can almost, in like 30 minutes, get kind of a workable full set of letters.
Like a draft.
Yeah, without the weird ones.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get an S out of this.
That's a whole day.
I don't have time for that.
Time for that.
You never start with an S.
Yeah.
Never start with an S.
Never start with an S.
So yeah, the digital tools that we've got have really afforded us the luxury to be able to do some really wild stuff and decide fairly early on in that process, like same day, whether this is worth going for. So I'm not going to spend 1,000 hours on something that's terrible, but something that's got some potential, maybe I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Right? So I think part of the reason we're seeing a lot of really weird stuff is because people can.
Yeah.
And
that's what they do.
Yeah, maybe that's okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it never really occurred to me before how much it would have been limited by the actual physical tools. But even when I think of like Courier, like the standard typewriter font, like it now occurs to me that was probably is the way it is because of the way typewriters work. And that it would have to be spaced out in a certain way because it's a very wide font.
Yeah.
Which, I use it a lot because it's still standard
Right.
for screenplays,
Yeah, of course.
right? But if you use it on anything else, you're like, this is useless. It's so wide.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but it had never occurred to me that would be why.
Okay. So we're sure that there's some hot fonts out there in the world. There's some sexy little fonts out there that some of us font noobs who don't know anything about this have never heard of. Are there some fonts that we should not miss? If you're like, people should be looking at this.
Wow. These are hard-hitting questions.
We're
So-
deep
We try.
journalists.
Yeah.
I bet there are.
You can also think on this and let us know. We can put it in the Nerds Letter.
That's right.
Maybe I do need a second for
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the ones that I don't think everybody knows about Optima,
Yeah.
Optima.
right?
Yep. We know
Back to Optima.
that's a classic.
And some of the stuff that's coming out of a place like Climtype in New Zealand. Like, I feel like it's some of the most incredible type work happening right now, but probably not outside of the weird, tiny group of type designers and graphic designers that I know, right? He's got quite a reach, but I think the general public doesn't quite know yet.
So go check it out.
Very cool.
One question that I just kind of occurred to me because I know that you go and collect things with interesting typefaces and vintage typefaces. I'm sure have they
for sure.
changed over the many decades? Are there certain looks that are very 60s or very 20s, or are there elements of that you can pick out?
Yeah. There are definite eras of type design and of lettering aesthetic. So pre-60s, you can fairly well bet that everything you see printed is going to be metal type, because that's the only technology that we have.
Yeah.
In the 60s, well, mid to late 50s, we start getting into phototype. So that's instead of it being a metal sort that makes an impression, all of a sudden we've got these rubylith cut negatives, and they can be scaled with lenses to any size. So all of a sudden we've got this variable with just a single phototype, right? Rather than I'd need a handful of different sizes of metal type.
Yeah, this is heavy, literally heavy.
Literally heavy, yeah. So after the 60s, we're getting into other technologies and other ways of producing these that invariably the technology always changes the form. So one of the things when we're moving into this light emitted kind of photo negative is that they are having to change the line weights a lot, especially on serifs that otherwise would be quite sharp. They're having to chonk them up a lot so that the light can pass through cleanly and still have a sharp edge to it. And so that's why typically in the 60s and 70s, we get a lot kind of bigger X height. So the relationship between a capital letter size and a lowercase letter size, that gets bigger, partly because they are chonking up so much. And so they need to invariably, or necessarily have to make the counter spaces, the inside spaces of letters, bigger too. So that means that the whole size is getting a bit bigger. So that's an easy way to identify something from the 60s and 70s. Like it's always going to be quite a lot bigger, a lot more open counter space. So some of those things are related to the technology. It's also, like again, pre-50s, it's not always going to be metal type. So like when you're talking about like, oh, look at that font. What font is that? Sometimes it's not fonts because it might just be lettering, which is kind of the larger umbrella term. So we've got stuff in lettering that's going to be like hand-painted stuff.
Right.
We've got calligraphy in lettering. We've got incised or carved lettering, right? So all of those have a different vibe to them, but also like they're following a bit of a style as well from era to era. So I like looking at not just books of font specimens through the ages,
So font specimens, what a
but
great
also
phrase.
there are tons of these sign painters manuals for certain years. And they kind of keep sign painters, which was a very thriving business.
Yeah.
They keep them up to date on the current styles and like what people are looking for in advertising. So like corresponding them back and forth, you can see how the sign painters are affecting changes in how people are designing type in metal and how they're trying to mimic some of the classic types in metal of a certain day or era into like sign painting. And so there's this back and forth and this cycle that kind of goes through decades. But still, yeah, I think it's very identifiable, certain eras in whatever kind of vibe or form they're particularly kind of putting out there.
Whoa,
That's fascinating.
sick.
Everything is fascinating. Every
Everything's
single
so
thing is
interesting.
fascinating.
What's the nerdiest thing you've done in relation to your fandom of fonts? Because you've designed fonts, award-winning fonts.
That might be it. Is that
Yeah, that can be. It's up to you. What
is spending 800 hours on a is that
It can absolutely count. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not nerdy.
yeah. I think I'm going to choose. So I spent a summer at the School for Visual Arts in New York in their summer residency for type design, and I had incredible teachers. They were very much like, we're not your teacher, we're your like what? And it was like very intimidating because they were like huge names in type. And one of them was Tobias Frere-Jones. He was one of the designers of Gotham.
Oh.
You probably know Gotham.
I know
that
Gotham.
one. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Tobias is one of these heavy hitters in type design. So he was one of our instructors and mentors during this time. And he took us one afternoon just for a walk around Manhattan. And so him pointing out all these kind of influential and important like painted signs or carved kind of stone monuments around New York was maybe that's the most nerdy font-related thing I can think of.
I would go on that tour. I think that would be fascinating.
I agree. He could charge anything he wanted, and people, I think, would go.
100%.
Truly, because New York is such an influential city culturally as well. So there's like these things that might have affected not just North America, but worldwide based on a decision that someone made in a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I love this topic. Okay, I have a little mini game for you. So a lot of people have their go-to fonts, but I'm going to list some fonts, and I want you to describe it in 2 to 3 words. The description can be opinion-based or based on the actual physical look of the font, whatever it brings up for you. Okay? Okay, we're just going to start. We're starting easy. We're starting basic. Arial.
Subtle sophistication.
Oh, I
Love it. Times New Roman.
An attempt.
Oh, that was savage.
That font just got red.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry.
No, I liked it.
I feel like these are things that I love when people have strong opinions about fonts.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things about it. Like its prototype was one of Jensen's fonts. So we're talking like 15th century. And they took a bunch of, from a printed document, they took a bunch of examples of all the letters. And the one lowercase a that they chose was the only A in this whole book that was from a different font by accident.
What?
So they threw this in there, and that's why it seemed weird for a long time.
Oh, weird.
They just live with it.
That
It just
is
is
so
what it
bizarre. I am gonna go look for that now.
Look for
That's
that weird
so
A.
interesting. It is not my favorite font, so you're not offending anybody here.
Calibri.
Sans flavor.
Oh, I love this. Helvetica.
Heavy and stable.
Oh, sturdy.
Sturdy. Okay, Tahoma.
I have almost no opinion on Tahoma.
I mean, that's an opinion in
That
itself.
is on its own speaks volumes, I
Again,
feel.
I'm so sorry, Tahoma.
No. Comic Sans MS.
Brilliant, exuberant.
I love.
Garamond.
Classy, classics.
Honestly, I feel very vindicated. That was my live journal font for years, and I wanted it to say classy.
I love how personally you are taking this.
I am. Every single thing you say, I'm like, and I'm right.
I suppose I was correct all along.
Courier New.
Stately, but fun.
Okay.
I just think deadline.
Oh, Roboto.
Adequate for digital.
Okay, this is just a side thing. Why is it called Roboto? It's nothing to do with robots. That's a real, okay, maybe a dumb question.
No, I don't think so.
I just would imagine it being a little blockier.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, babe.
That is fair.
How do you
That's a
name
fair
things?
assumption.
As soon as you
Any way
said,
you want.
that's fair, babe, I'm like, you're an idiot, Steph.
No,
Keep
that's
going.
not what I meant.
Okay, next one, Trebuchet.
I think it's fine.
All right. Lato.
Lato?
Lato. I might be saying it wrong.
I can't even picture it.
Oh, I
Sorry
looked up
to
like
that
top
man.
10 fonts.
The
and
fact that you
people
could-
were like, Lato is one of them.
The fact that you could picture all the other ones we've named is on its own incredibly impressive, so don't worry.
Open Sans.
a worthwhile project.
Okay. Futura.
Perfect optimism.
Oh, it also doesn't look futuristic at all. I just want to throw that in there.
I think you're writing poetry right now.
Okay. And I'm gonna give you a couple. Cooper Black.
Oh, just chunky perfection. I love it so much.
And I'm going to end with Optima. You can't see this, but his face just lit up.
Clarity beyond art.
Oh, see? Poetry. This is what I'm telling you. That's gorgeous. Gorgeously described.
Thank you.
We're about to wrap up, but is there anything else font-wise you need to get out into the world? You have an open forum. I mean, you have one because you teach this and you can say whatever you want to your young, impressionable minds.
Yeah, but for the font noobs, perhaps, what is something we should all be paying attention or know about fonts?
Oh, boy. Well, I feel like my number one rule with fonts is always like legibility. If it is not a legible font, I think it's not a font to me.
Oh.
It's some fun lettering. It might be some artistic expression. Like you're capturing something and that's great. But if I can't read it readily, I feel like it has failed as a font. I think that is its platonic ideal.
Like the fundamental purpose.
Yeah, we need to have some.
Sorry.
Don't apologize. But sorry, you were saying we need to have some.
Yeah, like those letter forms deserve some respect in terms of working together as a whole system. Like that's the true kind of, I don't know, the dignity of it. Like there's something about spending so much time designing a whole font face where you have taken the care to correspond every form with every other form, right? Like, it's not like I've just drawn a letter D and said, that's my D.
Yeah.
I put that D next to a B or a V or an O or an X, and it has to work and feel like it belongs together, like they have the same DNA. So, is that practical information for the person on the street? I don't know.
Doesn't need to be.
But yeah, I feel like that and spacing.
Yeah.
Spacing is my other favorite thing about fonts. If you had to learn one thing about setting type, so like if you're just going to be using your Microsoft Word or whatever, if you can understand spacing between letters, between words, and between lines of text, you are head and shoulders above everybody else. I think that's the major determining factor of how something looks good, is someone has the skill to understand the space.
Oh,
You heard it here.
that's amazing.
Learn that spacing.
Damn.
You could blow minds.
Ugh. Okay.
Steph's is blown right now.
It's blown right now. Okay, at the end of every episode, we like to share our micro fandoms of the week, which we're going to do in a hot little moment. But before we do, there's some other ways you can connect in with us. This show's always going to be free, like we mentioned off the top. But if you're like, I got so much money and I need to give it to two little Canadian nerds, we can help you with that. I swear. Go to patreon.com/The Fandom Show, where you can get access to episodes early. You can submit questions. You can enjoy our monthly Nerds Letter, and you can listen to the exclusive patron podcast, The Fan Club, where we watch movies that one of us loves and the other one has never seen. You can find us on social media at Fandom Show Pod, or at our website, thefandomshow.com, or come on to YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel now. Subscribe, comment there. Come chat and be like, yo, Kaya, that's a nice sweater you're wearing. I don't know.
Yeah, we love to hear from
Yeah,
you.
you can watch us with your eyes as well as listen with your ears.
That's right. All of the ways. Well, I guess you could touch us. Don't.
Hiya.
Anyway, please tell all of your nerdiest friends about us or your regular friends. And if you could get on your podcast provider, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, whether it's, I don't know, the other ones, and do a little rate, review, subscribe. All of those are incredibly helpful. Even if it's a 1-sentence review, a 1-word review, you could just put your favorite font in a review right now and post it.
Cool.
And that is incredibly helpful because it lets people know about our show. It lets them find our show, which means more people can learn about more cool fandoms. And that might change their life. We don't know. They might be designers after this or go learn, you know?
Yeah.
We don't know. So change your life and tell people about our podcast.
Inspire a passion.
That's right. Exactly. And help us build more fans of fans. We also have merch, so you can head over to tpublic.com/stores/The Fandom Show and snag our faces on your favorite things. Those favorite things may or may not include shirts, mugs, and more. You can also find us from the From Superheroes Discord, where you can meet other fans, or you can hit us up directly. And our theme song is by Yusu Kim, and our logo, including the font, is by John Blair.
Hot damn.
I guess it would be lettering in that case.
It would be lettering.
A fact I now know.
Boom. Now for our micro fandoms of the week, starting with Kaya. What you fanning?
You know what? This is a bit of a cheat, but I'm fanning that we won an award, baby.
Yeah!
We haven't had a space to talk about it, so I'm just using this space for it. We just recently won a Canadian Podcast Award for Best Society and Culture Podcast.
Which is sick.
Yeah.
Thanks, people who listened and voted.
I just want to put this here. I'm just a fan of all the people who make this show possible, whether that's the people who listen, that's you, or the wonderful guests that come on and talk to us, that's you, Carl, and everyone who has before and everyone who will in the future. I'm so chuffed that we received that. It means a lot, and I feel nice about it.
Aww.
Yeah, that's all.
That's
okay,
nice.
You do yours now.
Oh, mine's not as positive. Mine's Squid Game. So season 2 recently came out of Squid Game, which we devoured very, very quickly.
Very quickly.
And then immediately went back and watched season 1. And I've just been thinking a lot about it. And Mr. Beast released a show called Beast Games or what. So I haven't watched it.
Beast Games.
I can't watch it because I've watched Squid Game recently. And the thought of this live action version where everyone's like, you know what have I learned from Squid Game? Let's do it.
Yeah, we should have one.
It just, it sits so gross in my tummy. But the way that Squid Game has done it is fantastic. And a friend of ours who's also on the podcast, Shannon LaHaye, has been deep diving into just like Korean entertainment right now and is really on a deep dive of T.O.P., who is one of the actors in Squid Game, who is also a K-pop star that was shamed for smoking marijuana. It's a whole thing. Anyways, I just can't stop thinking about Squid Game and all things related to Squid Game.
Yeah, go watch it, especially if you plan to watch Beast Games.
Or if you watch Beast Games and you're like, yo, this is sick, you have to go watch Squid Game now.
Yeah, that's your homework.
Go.
I strongly recommend because you might have a different opinion on whether that should exist.
Anyways.
And maybe you don't and you love it, and that's also fine.
That's also fine. Love the things you love. But Squid Game. Gets right in the brain.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Carl, what are you fanning out about right now?
Wow. So, this might not be a stretch or a surprise. So I play the piano and have for many, many years.
Lovely.
But I had originally very a not kind of conservatory technical experience.
Okay.
So my teacher was 75 at the time. She was a former vaudeville entertainer.
What?
And she had learned from just various jazz pianists and like orchestra travelers, right? So she taught me how to read music and to plunk out melodies and chords and to improvise on them. So it was a very fruitful kind of learning experience.
Yeah.
And something that I have I've continued with into my adult life, and I've done some other stuff. I've branched into classical music on my own.
Oh, lovely.
So I have some sense of how these things work, but I've never had the true kind of technical instruction.
Yeah.
So I just started piano lessons a few months ago, and lately, so what I'm working through is the Hanon exercises for the virtuosic pianist.
Ooh.
That sounds fun.
It is.
And hard.
And so I'm devouring all of this YouTube content because there is a lot of technical kind of piano content available.
Of course there is.
And it is so meticulous and nuanced, like micro movements of your wrist and hand kind of stuff, like posture.
Obviously weight and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just very into it. And I am laser focused on it, which to be kind of like laser focused on this is very similar to the fonts because it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Like for me to play a scale up 4 octaves on the keyboard, I don't expect to be good at this until I'm putting it on my calendar for 2 years from now.
Amazing.
I will be pretty good in 2 years' time, I think. For now, I can play the scale and it sounds like a scale, but I know it is not to the level that I want it to be.
You know the nuance.
So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm nerding on.
That's sick.
You're, like the ability to really nerd out on micro changes, like these little details that over time build up into a big thing is so cool.
I said it off the top, it's a superpower.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of patience, but I really love that people do because it does make a difference. That's awesome. I feel like you should come back on at some point in like 2 years and then we can once again talk about this and you can be like, it's better. It's better now.
I understand it better. I know what I need to
check
do.
it again in 4 years and be like, I'm up to good now.
What a dream.
What a dream.
Liz, Carl, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. Where can people find you? What do you want to plug?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Oh, I'm just online at Carl Shura. It's just always my name. CarlShura. Various social media platforms. And of course, departmentofletters.ca.
Yep.
That's new and it will grow over time. So yeah, give it a check in.
Is there an Instagram account for that as well?
Yes. It's not great. It's a couple of posts, but
everything starts somewhere.
It's out there at Department of Letters.
In 2 years, it could be pretty good.
Yep, exactly correct.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much. This has been wildly fascinating, and I'm just like, my brain is buzzing right now.
Delightful.
Delightful. Until next time, love the things you love and tell everyone about them. Bye.
That was so cool.
That was so cool.
That was everything I dreamed.
The Fandom Show.